Let's go back to the year of 2004, where your father walks in with a console you knew nothing about. And you're like, what is this shit, a PS1? But it's a Dreamcast, and I was quite interested in it. The controller was quite interesting as well, with its shape and its button layout. The VMUs were pretty badass too, making it one of the most original ways to store data I've ever seen before. My Dreamcast had 3 games with it. Sonic Adventure, Power Stone, and finally, a weird game called Cyber Troopers Virtual On Oratorio Tangram. And I was quite interested in this game. So what are we waiting for? Let us jump into the review of Cyber Troopers Virtual On Oratorio Tangram. And you have no idea how hard it was to remember that line. That's a long name, and not screwing it up is a big deal to me. Anyway, besides my insanity, let us get into the review.
Presented by Sega.
Now after that bitchin' intro, we have a couple options to choose. We have single player mode, we have versus mode, which is covered up because of the start to player 1 mode, training, watch, replay, and options. Well, training is basically getting used to the controls. Watch is pretty much, you can watch CPUs fight or your save data on your VMU. Depending on how much space you have, you can do that. And same with replay. And options basically just changes the color of your robots, or it's nothing special. Your jump pack, your memory card, like load your stuff on there and whatnot. Anyway, let's get to the game. A quick history before we go on to the game. Cyber Troopers Virtual On Oratorio Tangram is a 1998 Japanese Sega Model 3 arcade game that was later ported to the Sega Naomi arcades and then later for the Dreamcast home console in Japan in 1999 and North America in 2000. This game is basically where you control a bunch of humanoid robots. Interesting. The version you'll be playing on the Dreamcast version 5.45. I mean, it's not too hard to be a genius to see that it's version 5.45. I mean, it just says it right there, right on the loading screen. 5.45. Anyway, which added a couple of new features, such as new arenas and a port of a few old Operation Moongate stages, which is the previous game in series. A special FMV ending only after completing the game with every mech without continuing. Are you fucking mad? This game is quite difficult for 2 reasons. I mean, the difficulty, which you can tone down, and controls. Now, I already went over the controls, but let me just tell you the worst part about the controls. It's the fucking thumbstick and the fucking D-pad placement. Now let's bitch about the controls. Since the Dreamcast controller doesn't have a second thumbstick, you have to use the D-pad to move, and the thumbstick to change the camera angle. Does this look fucking physically possible to do with one hand, not make it hard to control? Well, at least when you jump, you lock onto your enemy, so it makes things a little easier. But still. The controls are quite awkward at first, but there's one problem. You can't use a thumbstick to move. You have to use a D-pad. Well, your character can move in any directions with it, so that's okay. You can use the X button to dash, but you also have to hold a direction or to do set action. The B button also does the exact same thing. You can use the Y button to jump, and you can move while midair if you're holding a direction before doing so. You also can glide/dash through the air with the X or B button. Then there is the A button. Well, if you're in the air, you push A to drop quickly. In order to attack, you have to use the triggers. The R trigger does a normal attack. The left trigger does a somewhat special attack, and pushing both does your special move. Bitchin'. Oh, and holding the A button while pushing the triggers also does a slightly different version of your normal attacks. There are many Virtuoids to pick from in this game, but yeah, I'm sorry if I butcher some of these names, but wish me luck, and here we go. The first is MBV707G Temjin, RVR39 M-Farmed B, RVR33 M-Farmed S, RVR14 Feiyen Kin, RVR42 Cypher, RVR87 Speknef, SGV417L Angelin, SAV326 D/9 Grisvok, XBV819 Ball Series, HBV502 Raiden, RVR 68 Dordre, CB97 Brados, and Tangram. Sorry if I screwed up, but anyway, continuing. Now let me talk about the last three. Agim is quite interesting because if you don't attack your opponent for 2 to 3 matches, he will appear in-game and fight you, and he will destroy you. But if you beat him, you can play as him, and he's not as good as he is when you fight him. But for him to appear, you have to set your Dreamcast to October 2000. Bratos is a mini-boss you'll face at the half point of the game. And let's be honest, who else jumped as a bit frightened at this?
Warning, 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 warning.
Then there's Tangram, and he had the same menu thing that made me go, is my Dreamcast glitching or something?
Warning, 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 warning.
Oh. The game crashed. Maybe? Oh. He, or it, is the last boss of the game. It is a giant sphere made up of small triangles suspended in a massive space with no ground. If you don't beat him in the allotted time, you'll get an instant game over. No continues. So if you're gonna not win, just get killed by him so you can continue. Well, everybody, that just about wraps up this entire review. If it felt rushed or didn't show off gameplay, well, don't want to spoil too much for you, I guess, if that's the excuse you want. But it's a pretty good game. I mean, if you have a Dreamcast and you don't have this game yet, there is something wrong with you. You need to get this. And now I'll talk about some things that I didn't explain in there. Well, I think of the graphics, the gameplay, the soundtrack, the replayability or replay value. Well, in terms of the gameplay itself, besides my little rant there without a second thumbstick and having to use the D-pad as movement, it's pretty damn solid. I mean, it is quite impossible to do this kind of thing at the same time with both thumbs. It just wouldn't work. Because this is supposed to move your camera left and right. And if there's dual, like, joysticks, which I think there are out there, but they're probably kind of rare. If they're out there, then that's how you would probably play the game normally. But most people will use the normal Dreamcast controller. So since you can jump, it locks onto the enemy you're trying to get. So that's something I mentioned too. So that's a good thing. I'm saying so a lot. So how about your life? And let's see. So the gameplay itself is pretty good, and the combat can get quite intense, and especially multiplayer. Me and my friend were like freaking on edge. We both had like 1% health left, the other percent health left. it was pretty cool. And I forgot to mention, which I'm not going to go back in there and edit out, or edit in, is on the top of the screen, you have your health bars. Player is green, player is orange, and enemy is green. And whenever it gets to 0%, you dead. Obviously, your special attack, your left trigger and right trigger at the same time will take them out faster, and then there's a lot of attacks that will just kind of deflect off of them, so you have to find your own strategy to defeating them. And the two characters I use the most are Raiden and what was that one's name? It's like that big buff green one, not Bratos, I forget his name now. I think it's Brovok, I don't know. I use those two the most. And let me say, those are probably two of the best characters in my opinion. So, onward to the graphics. Well, I am pretty damn impressed with the Dreamcast. This is a game that came out in 2000, and it looks like it could be up to standards with the PS2. I mean, I'm not saying like early PS2, I mean like, maybe 2004-ish PS2. It was that good. I mean, I was just blown away. And most PS2 games on my HDTV look like crap sometimes using just standard cables. Now the Dreamcast is using its own standard cables, which are pretty much I don't know if they're the exact same thing, but I use the standard cables on HDTV and it looks better. Dreamcast games look better on my HDTV than they do my PS2 stuff. Imagine that with a VGA box. That would make everything look shiny and crisp and 60 frames per second kind of thing. But yeah, graphically, pretty damn good. The FMV cutscenes, full motion video, they're pretty good. The human model you see them getting is kind of weird, and it's funny. It's powered by a Dreamcast. Imagine if that was powered by a PlayStation 3. Oh, that could be something interesting. And in terms of its replay value, depending on if you're a huge fighter fan or not, it varies. For me, when I played it back then, it had a somewhat replay value because I didn't know what you could unlock at the time, and I thought, oh, I could just run through every character of this arcade mode, have some fun with it. That turned out to be quite difficult very quickly because I was not good with all the characters, and I don't know, I only used the same two characters, and then I figured out years later, talk about 2009ish when I got the game pack, about the secrets and the hidden unlockables. You could unlock a gem, and I'm like, oh my god, I want to play as that character. Because if you look in the manual, it shows him, so it's like, how does you unlock him? Then you set it to a certain date, and then when you get him, he's kind of weak. And he saves to your memory card, but sometimes it doesn't save it, so it's kind of about that. See, unlocking a gem is something you can work towards, and then there's the special FMV ending if you beat the game with all the robots without dying or having continue once. Haven't done that. That's a challenge I could do in a live stream or something, maybe not. So, other than that, oh yes, the music. The soundtrack for this game is amazing. Now, I don't know if you notice, you probably have the music playing in the background of the video, and it's probably playing still right now. Well, maybe not, because probably the music I did is from the game. And I recommend you look it up. The Cyber Troopers Virtual on Oratorio Tangram soundtrack. It is fantastic. So, yes, music is fantastic, graphics are great, gameplay is fantastic, except for that fucking one thing I told you about. And I don't know. It's just, and the replay value, it varies from person to person. So anyway, I'm Alex, so that was my review, and I am very tired. It is 3:04 in the morning. I shouldn't be doing it this late. Yeah, I'm Alex. See ya.